Hey everyone, and welcome back to Ontario Cryptids. I cannot believe that Christmas is right around the corner. So I'm going to give you guys a little plug. Head on over to the store and take advantage of the 15% off all merchandise. And we also have some delivery options to get your merchandise to you in time for Christmas. So head on over there to my store and start browsing. If you have an encounter story that you would like to share, then please forward your stories to OntarioCryptids@gmail.com. I would be honored to share your story with like-minded people. Now sit back and relax as we begin with today's episode. This first encounter takes place in the winter of 1996. We're going to Dua National Park in Australia. I went camping once with a couple of mates in Dua National Park, somewhere along the river. This was winter camping, so it was cold, and it was probably around 1996. The night before, we had done a bunch of ecstasy and mushroom in Queanbeyan, but we had sobered up by the next day. But we were really tired. Just thought I would mention it, but I don't think it's relevant. We weren't tripping anymore. So anyways, that night we left the campfire going because we passed out pretty early. But by about 10 p.m., one of my mates woke up because he heard what sounded like 2 or 3 people walking around outside our tent. He decided to greet these people because we were in a pretty remote area, and figured that letting these jokers know that we were awake was probably the best way to stop them from pulling some crap. But when he opened the tent, what he saw really scared the shit out of him. He swears he saw 2 creatures, as he puts it, playing with the campfire, poking sticks in it. These creatures were like 10-year-olds in size, but mostly covered in thick brown hair. Anyways, when they saw him, they scat super quick. Me and my other mate never saw them, but I did hear them run off into the bush. This next one comes from a Reddit user called BestPhotograph5523. This one takes place in a rural area in Florida, in southern parts of Florida. I was told I saw a dogman, so I'm here to tell you what I experienced. I've never heard of dogman until someone commented about him, so I'm hoping you guys can confirm if it was a sighting of a dogman or if it was another entity. I live in a rural area in Florida. This happened a few weeks ago. I was driving by myself at around midnight, and I came to a stop at a light where there's a cemetery on the right and a new apartment building on the left. This particular light is extremely long since it's not activated by sensors when you pull up to the light. I'm waiting for a few minutes and then all of a sudden I instinctively look behind me. It felt like someone was watching me intently. About 30 feet away from me where I was waiting for the light is a bus stop behind me. Right in front of the benches where you wait for the bus, I see a huge figure that looks like a wolf or a giant dog. I'm staring at it thinking to myself, wow, that's an enormous dog. All the while, I start to feel goosebumps. I feel my heart start racing, and I can't figure out why. I start to feel evil thoughts in my head. I say feel because I couldn't make out what words were being said. I just remembered while I was staring at this dog, I felt like it was mocking me, laughing, and challenging me. Then, I see the figure stand up on 2 legs while staring in my direction. It stood up and was suddenly taller than the top of the bus overhang, but it didn't look like a human. It looked like an animal just standing on 2 legs. While I'm still waiting for the damn light to turn green, and I keep in my mind there's lights all around the bus stop, but this figure was pure black. So the figure was standing up on 2 legs, and now it looked like a huge dog with an alpaca neck and body, but the neck looked really girthy. I see this thing continue to stare in my direction, and I think to myself, okay, this is really weird, but even if it's my imagination, it's gonna disappear when I start driving. The whole time I'm feeling panicked and I hear in my head, "Run, but I can chase you." I skid out of the stoplight. It's still freaking red, but I did not care at that point, and I drive away as quick as I can. And then I look behind me as I'm driving, and the freaking figure is sprinting at full speed on all fours behind me. It looked like a deranged wolf was chasing me. I felt pure panic as I was speeding away, and maybe out of instinct I yelled, "I have God with me. You can't hurt me. Nothing can hurt me. I'm protected by my angels and by God." Paraphrasing here. It was at that point I realized I was feeling like I was being choked, because after I said that out loud, I felt like I could breathe. I didn't feel like I was being chased anymore, and when I looked back, the thing was gone. The total time I spent at that light was around 3 minutes. The light takes like 5 minutes to turn green. And when it stood on 2 legs, it did look like an animal, but with human-like mannerisms, and the legs were human-like as well. Let me know your thoughts. For this next one, we're going to be headed to New South Wales, Australia. The nearest town is Port Macquarie, and this takes place in December of 2003. Myself and 2 others witnessed a huge bipedal creature in the woods, or the bush, as we would say in Australia, back in December of 2003. We were about 15, I think, at the time, and I had been out late wandering around town, thanks to poor parental supervision. At the time, I lived in a strict parental household, so I would find any excuse to go to my friend's house on the weekends, where there was, let's say, less in terms of rules. I had this one friend who lived on the edge of town, and his mom was still pretty young and liked to go out on the weekends, usually Friday and Saturday nights, and stay out pretty late. So we would go over to this friend's house to do stupid kid stuff. My friend's brother had a basketball game he had to go to closer to town, so we all thought we would head over there, and this would kick off our night, and it will give us something to do. So we took the suburban route, which took us a long time to get there. On these weekends, we would have until 2 or 3 in the morning to get back to his place before his mom got home. We decided to spend more time in town, and the next thing we knew, it was 1:30 in the morning. So we started running to get back in time. We decided to take a pretty sketchy shortcut home through the edge of a large wilderness area to beat my friend's mom home so she wouldn't find out that we'd be roaming around at night. So we started walking down the trail. The first 10 minutes was pretty uneventful. We were all talking as we were walking, then we started to hear something in the woods. Something massive we couldn't yet see stalked us from a distance, then put on speed when we were nearing the only main turn in the trail. Freaking out and running, we beat it to the turn, but not long after my friend stopped and looked back behind us. I did the same, and we could see the silhouette of a massive head and shoulders just watching us. Its eyes shined reddish orange in the moonlight. The thing then just blended back into the bush on the other side of the trail and then stalked us out again the rest of the way. When we got out to the other end, we all couldn't breathe and stopped under a street light. For whatever reason, it made us feel safe. We last saw the thing in the tree line while we were under the light. It looked at us and then just turned and went back into the bush. And that was it. We spent the rest of the early morning hours Googling what it could have been and found out about Yowie. So we threw together a pretty average report about it, based on a collection of parts the 3 of us remembered. I didn't remember its noises or smell, but the other guys did. They didn't remember any details of its features, but I 100% saw some texture of fur. The date is unknown, but we're going to be heading to Lafleur County, Oklahoma. This one comes from a viewer named Captain America. He had left this comment after viewing my episode number 8, Choctaw Natives' War with Bigfoot. I had a violent encounter with a humongous Bigfoot over 20 feet tall. In those same mountains, I have a picture of him. The county where this happened is Lafleur County, named after Joshua Lafleur. My story began one night with a buddy of mine. We were doing some night fishing for catfish when we had a violent encounter with the giant Bigfoot and barely escaped. He snapped a 2 feet diameter oak tree in half in an attempt to block my truck from leaving. In weeks and months following this, we started returning to the area with an assault rifle and a drone. I went from thinking this creature was an undiscovered species of giant ape to finding out an ET connection. I have drone pics of Caucasian space people, alien greys, Bigfoot, and Dogman. If this wasn't far out enough, what we saw next was even more mind-blowing. There were crates of giant heads and body parts in the forest, and they were being unloaded and reassembled. They obviously abducted these giants from another planet and disassembled them for transport. Apparently they have advanced knowledge of tissue preservation and can reassemble a body and later reattach the parts. They have a machine that looks like a big dog collar that they put around the neck and heel it back to the trunk. They use the same machine to reattach the hands to the arms and the arms to the body, etc. Many of the giant heads are about 15 feet tall, and since the head-to-body ratio of a person is 7:1, they would be around 105 feet tall, fully assembled. We didn't hang around long enough to see one fully assembled. When I got the drone pics, they had just delivered the crates of heads and parts the night before and were busy unloading them and laying them out on the ground for reassembly. Most of the giants are giant white people, but some of them are reptilians. I put one of the reptilians' head pictures in my old YouTube account profile pic and shared my story with a few people. A couple of weeks later, YouTube suspended my account for no reason. I broke none of their rules. Someone obviously doesn't want me talking about this. After recently seeing the video of the 100 feet tall giant taken in the Canadian mountaintops, it reinvigorated me to start sharing what I know. I realize this is far out and I understand if people don't believe it. I probably wouldn't believe it had I not seen it firsthand. Apparently these space people and their alien gray Bigfoot and Dogman helpers are starting a breeding colony of giants in the wilderness areas to attempt a future takeover. Many of the faces of the giant people have a frozen look of horror, as if it was their last expression before being paralyzed and dismembered. I assume they found a planet of giants living in a primitive existence and dismembered them for shipment because they were too heavy to move in one piece. I'm contemplating releasing these mind-blowing pictures, but I'm not sure what's going to happen when I do. I just put one of the pics in my profile pic and my account was suspended. I also shared my story on a Bigfoot site called Kiamichi Giants, which is no longer on the internet. A few days after sharing my story, a vehicle with a U.S. government tag was parked outside of my drive. I live out in the country, so it's out of the ordinary to have a car parked on the dirt road. Nobody was in the car, so I drove into the driveway and checked the house, but I didn't see any signs of a break-in. I don't know why the government would be so worried about me sharing this story because it's so far out, nobody is probably going to believe me. There is a lot more hair-raising things I experienced when we were going into that encounter area. I have been chased by a UFO surrounded by a bunch of creatures in the woods, was harassed for close to a month at night with UFOs flying over the ranch and knocks on the side of the house in the middle of the night, etc. Once we stopped sneaking in and spying on them, the harassment stopped. They were apparently trying to intimidate me into backing off. Anyway, thanks again for the great videos. Wow, we had some truly interesting encounters today, and I hope you all enjoyed today's episode. Before we end things for today, I will be streaming next weekend, well actually next Friday, December 15th at 8 p.m. So CWL, Joe in Alaska, and Air Force One, get ready. Make sure that you're on my Discord channel. I have sent you 3 instructions. If these stories reminded you of an encounter you have had, then please forward your stories to OntarioCryptids@gmail.com. I would be honored to share your story on this channel. It's time to thank my OC members for all their support. And if you want to learn more about the OC membership program, please check out my membership video to learn about the perks. I would like to thank my current members, Jim, Teresa, Shell, and Elizabeth. Thank you guys so very much. Now thank you all for listening until the end. I truly appreciate it. Please hit the like button on your way out and smash the subscribe button if you're new to my channel. Have a great weekend, and I hope to see you all next week right here on Ontario Cryptids.